Hey everyone, welcome to Mental Health Bites with Dr. Judy. In this podcast, we'll cover timely mental health topics, answer your burning questions, and leave you with an actionable tip to better your life every single day. Let's move on to the timely topic of the day. Today, I'd like to talk to you about little known behavioral addictions. So, everyone has probably heard of alcohol abuse and misuse, substance abuse and misuse. People are starting to learn more about internet gaming and gambling, also as forms of addictions. But have you heard of some of these behavioral addictions that may be not as well known, but I bet if you look around you and maybe even look at your own behaviors, you may say, hey, I might be doing some things that put me at risk for having this become a behavioral addiction. So here are some of the ones to consider. So, first, what constitutes an addiction? Well, addiction is traditionally understood as a chronic condition that's characterized by compulsive engagement in rewarding stimuli despite adverse consequences. So, of course, substances like alcohol and drugs are commonly associated with addiction, but behaviors themselves can also become addictive. And behavioral addictions often go unnoticed because they're associated with activities that are generally considered beneficial or neutral or socially acceptable, like work, exercise, social media use, and so on. But when these activities become compulsive and detrimental to your well being, that's when it crosses the threshold in a form of behavioral addiction. So, here are some of the examples of little known addictions. The first one is workaholism. So, workaholism is an addiction to work when individuals feel a constant need to be productive and might derive their self worth from their job performance. This addiction is often socially reinforced in cultures that prioritize success and productivity, like America. But over time, workaholism can lead to burnout, strained relationships, and physical health issues like chronic stress and sleep disorders. Second, exercise addiction. So, of course, regular exercise is extremely beneficial for your physical and mental wellness. But exercise addiction occurs when someone feels compelled to exercise excessively, often to the detriment of their own physical health. It can be driven by a desire for control, a need to cope with emotions, or maybe an unhealthy body image. And exercise addiction can lead to overtraining, injuries, and an imbalance between physical and mental well being. Third, social media addiction. So, you've probably heard of this in some shape or form. Many of us use social media. It's basically ubiquitous at this point to most people's lives. But social media platforms are designed to be engaging. And for some people, that engagement can become compulsive. Social media addiction is characterized by excessive time spent on platforms, even though you know psychologically you're having a negative response. This type of addiction can lead to feelings of isolation, anxiety, and depression, and issues with self esteem due to constant comparison with others. Fourth, shopping addiction. This is compulsive buying. This is an uncontrollable urge to shop and purchase items, often driven by emotional needs rather than practical ones. The act of buying provides a temporary emotional high, but then it's followed by guilt or shame. Shopping addiction can result in financial problems, strained relationships, and emotional distress because a person is struggling with their inability to control their spending. It can also isolate other individuals and strain their relationships. Fifth, obsessive compulsive cleaning addiction. So, this is usually rooted in obsessive compulsive disorder or obsessive compulsive personality traits. This is a compulsive need to clean and organize. This behavior is often driven by an overwhelming anxiety about dirt, germs, or some kind of messiness in your environment. And that leads to repetitive cleaning routines that interfere with daily life and also their relationships. Unlike typical cleaning, which is done because you want to be clean and you want the place to look nice, compulsive cleaning is performed to alleviate intense anxiety or discomfort or to put something else off that they should be doing instead. These behaviors are often triggered by intrusive thoughts about contamination or disarray. And finally, six, news addiction. News addiction involves an overwhelming compulsion to consume news constantly, often driven by the fear of missing out, by anxiety or the need for control in uncertain times. So essentially, this is a form of doom scrolling. This addiction is characterized by excessive time spending reading, watching, or listening to negative news, again, often to the detriment of the person's mental health and daily functioning. So, what are the psychological mechanisms behind behavioral addictions? First, it's a type of reward system. Like alcohol and substance addictions, behavioral addictions are linked to the brain's reward systems. These are activities that release dopamine very quickly. And that's why it can become addictive because they create that temporary feeling of pleasure or relief from discomfort. Secondly, emotion regulation is a big mechanism behind behavioral addictions. Many behavioral addictions serve as a coping mechanism for the person to deal with their negative emotions or to escape negative thinking. And the addictive behavior distracts them temporarily from these negative sensations and reinforces the compulsion to repeat it the next time you're struggling with negative feelings and thoughts. And finally, societal and cultural influences. Cultural norms and societal pressures can also reinforce certain behaviors, making it harder to recognize them as addictive. If you work with a lot of workaholics, that feels normative to all of you. It even feels like a badge of honor that you'd wear. You hang out with individuals who use social media all the time. So it doesn't feel weird that you're constantly on your social media too, right? So a lot of this is being normalized by the people around you, by other people who might be also struggling. And it makes it harder to have insight when everybody around you seems to be doing the same thing. So, we're going to be talking about how you can combat this later on in this podcast. But let me know in the comments whether or not you think you have potential for some of these behavioral addictions. They're much more common than you think. So here's a question that comes from an anonymous listener, and they ask, how do I know if my intense focus on a hobby is a healthy passion or has crossed the line into a behavioral addiction? This is a great question. And I think it's all about balance, right? It's all about being able to know when is it okay to pursue this hobby, to take your time with it, and when is it that you're running away from your other responsibilities and that's why you're devoting your time to this hobby. And so there's a fine line sometimes between healthy engagement and addiction. But some of the signs to watch out for is really whether or not you find yourself obsessing and thinking about this all the time instead of the things that you need to be thinking about because they're your daily responsibilities or they're related to work projects that you have to finish. When you're doing the activity, do you find such an unnatural high that it feels like nothing else that you do in life can really come close? That's when it can be more of a risky behavior because that dopamine spike is so fast and so intense that it makes it harder for you to enjoy other activities that also might bring dopamine around in a more natural way. Another question I would ask yourself is this negatively impacting the way I feel about myself or my relationships? Oftentimes, if the answer is yes to one of those two questions, then it means that this behavior might need to be looked at. Doesn't mean that you have to eradicate it completely, but it does mean that you need to achieve more balance. So, good luck with that and let me know how you do. Let's move on to the practical tip of the day. And I've mentioned balance a couple of times in this podcast episode. And indeed, the practical tip of the day is an acronym, and the acronym is balance. So, no matter if you think that you might be crossing the line into a behavioral addiction, or you think, well, I'm not quite there, but it seems like something that I should be on the lookout for. Balance is a good acronym for different activities that will help you to have more healthy living and to engage in activities in a more healthful way that isn't too excessive or problematic for the other areas of your life. So, B stands for boundaries. Set clear boundaries for yourself to ensure that activities like work, exercise, social media, or hobbies do not take over your life. Recognize when to say no and when to take breaks. A stands for awareness. Cultivate self awareness to recognize when a behavior is starting to feel excessive. Regularly check in with yourself and be honest about your habits and their impacts on your life. L stands for lifestyle variety. So engage in a lot of different types of activities. Make sure that you make room to check out new activities and add them to your arsenal. Balance work with play, exercise with rest, and social interaction with alone time to prevent over reliance on any one activity for your happiness. A stands for accountability. So if you think that some of these behaviors are becoming more problematic, have someone you trust that's not just a yes person to keep you accountable. This can be a friend, family member, or a therapist. This helps in maintaining perspective and keeping your behaviors in check. Oftentimes, when people's behaviors start to become addictive, they become more and more secretive and isolative. So don't let yourself do that. Make sure you set up an accountability buddy. N stands for nourishment. Focus on nourishing your body and mind, not just through food, but also through things like positive, meaningful relationships, healthy hobbies, and time to relax and basically just do nothing. Sometimes it's okay to just schedule absolutely nothing on a weekend when you have that luxury. C stands for connection. Prioritize meaningful, quality connections with others, not quantity. Healthy relationships can act as a buffer against addictive behaviors and provide support when needed. When you're wrestling with negative thoughts and feelings, it's great to have these meaningful connections be able to talk to you and to support you so that you don't have to run to a behavior that might be excessive and actually more problematic in the long run. And finally, E stands for enjoyment. Make sure your activities bring genuine enjoyment and fulfillment rather than serving as mere distractions or coping mechanisms. So, really think hard about, am I doing this activity because I truly enjoy it? Or am I doing it because I'm trying to escape from something I don't want to deal with or think about? So, if you're honest with yourself and you follow this acronym of balance, you're going to be able to really hone in on those healthy behaviors and activities to buffer up your mental wellness every single day. Thank you for tuning in today to Mental Health Bites with me. If you enjoyed this video and found it helpful, there's plenty more where that came from. Make sure to hit that subscribe button and click the bell icon so you never miss an update. Give this video a thumbs up if you liked it and leave a comment below with your thoughts or any questions you have. Also, feel free to share this video with your friends and family who might find it useful. Stay tuned for more awesome content, and as always, thanks so much for your support.